All right, live at Drew's house, another edition. Hope everybody is doing well out there. We've had some warm weather. It has been very nice, all that good stuff. Hope everybody's staying healthy and getting vaccinated when they can. I had the first shot, but we'll take that for another day. We'll talk about that another day because my guest is here and ready to go. Jake Messier joins us. Hello, Jake.
Drew, how are you? I had my shot on Monday as well, so I'm right there with you.
Oh, well, let's start there. Why don't you tell everybody how it went for you?
Okay, I had a little bit of back and neck and shoulder pain, and a little bit fluey, but for a couple of days. But I got to tell you, I'll take that over any alternatives any day. So all in all, pretty good.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I ask? Did you do Pfizer or Moderna? Or?
I did Moderna. I had a choice, and it didn't really matter to me. So my wife told me to take Moderna, so that's what I do. So.
Well, since you shared your experience, I'll share mine. I got the one of the Pfizer in the right arm, and it was like the most painless shot I have ever had. Didn't even know what had happened. Like oddly painless, and I was all good, no symptoms. So hopefully we'll see on the second shot.
Yeah, my wife had hers the same night, and she had nothing, like a little bit of arm sore, but that was it. I was a couple days, but fine now. Looking forward to April 9th. Yeah, my second. So.
Very good. Well, excellent. See that? Hopefully they're out most of the country. It seems like we're moving in the right direction. So there we go. Yep. But let's talk about the issue at hand today. So you guys did something very, very cool. We all know the deal with the mascots. It's so many of these mascots that have had these, these names off the top of my head in this area. I can think of the Pentucket Sachems were around. Yeah, the Saugus Sachems. All these Indian Native American names, and so many of them are offensive to the culture and to those people. And there's arguments all over the place. But you guys did something about it. Tell us your story.
So it actually came out of last year with the protests and that kind of a thing. And we were noticing a lot of agencies just trying to, a lot of people were trying to do what they could. Restaurants were trying to feed people. And we're like, well, we're a marketing agency. I'm not sure what we can do to help people. We helped some social. Hey, do you guys need some help with social? Whatever. But then I started thinking, what can we really do in sort of a social justice type way that we can be effective? So it was around that time that another one of the high schools had popped up, and I was like, these high schools, they need help. They don't know how to do this. They're not a company. They don't how to navigate these things. So we did some research, and I think we did all of our research, and there's 14 high schools, I believe, in Massachusetts, 13 now, but 14 when we started this, that have offensive or in some way really non-PC, or in some cases really offensive mascots or monikers for their high schools. So we said, well, what we can do is offer pro bono services for fixing this, for trying to help these schools out of their issues. We were not in the business of trying to convince anybody to do this. That's the school committees have to make their votes. We got asked by a couple schools, hey, can you come in here and give a presentation as to why? We're not experts in that. We are experts in branding, but we're not experts in why somebody should make that decision. But once a school committee had made that decision, we then said, okay, we're going to help you with this, which is typically for one of these rebranding projects for us, it's between $10,000 and $25,000 is what we typically choose. And knowing, especially this year with schools and COVID and municipality budgets just, tanked right now, everybody's trying to figure it out. Schools don't need extra additional funds to try and do the right thing. So we wanted to try and take that barrier of entry away from the schools to being able to do this. So was the impetus for the whole thing.
So you have all these schools that are getting these calls to change their name, and you said, let's do something practically about it. Let's really put this option out there for schools to make these adjustments. And I'm assuming every single one of them came to you and said, let's do it.
No. A few of them did. So right now we are currently working with almost 5 schools. We had a call with another school this morning. So while this started off as a 2020 campaign, and we had really said we'd like to do this in 2020, we also realized that the need is out there. So we're not going to stop. I mean, I told my team, hey, there's 14 schools at this point. We're working with 5. We might as well just do the whole 14 if they ever come to us. So at this point, we might as well just rebrand racism in Massachusetts for high schools. So that's what our little moniker is. We're rebranding racism. We like alliterative, but we're marketers. So
what did you say? You got you said you had the 14 or 15 offensive names. What are we talking about here? Can you list them? You got them off the top of your head?
I don't. Well, I mean, one of the ones that to me stood out as the most offensive, and I'm glad that they came to us, was Athol out in Central/Western Mass. Athol, they were the Red Raiders, and if you Google the Athol Red Raiders, you're going to realize why it was time to change. It's very reminiscent of the Cleveland Indian, just a caricature cartoon that's just really poking fun at Native Americans. And so they were one of the most egregious ones, and they knew that for a long time. And the school committee held the vote, and they but I know the ones that we're working with. I know there's some other ones. So we are currently working with Athol, Neshoba, Taconic, which is out in Pittsfield. And
what are they?
What's that?
And what are they? What's their nickname?
Taconic is the chieftains, and then Neshoba was the warriors, I believe. I think, but definitely not warriors as in a Spartan or something like that. Definitely their marks were all Native American. And then North Brookfield is just the straight up Indians. And it's funny because this all sort of stemmed from also me. I graduated. I'm a proud North Brookfield alum. I graduated from North Brookfield High School. So I've always had an issue with being an Indian as my mascot. I played, sports in high school and that kind of a thing. And 1989, it wasn't as big a deal as it is now, or, I shouldn't say that. It really was a big deal in 1989. It's just the prevalence of it and the importance of it wasn't brought about until more recently. So we then started working with these high schools, and the process has gone really well. Athol actually has already, their school committee just last week voted in their new mascot, and that they now are no longer they weren't the Athol Red Raiders when the school committee stripped them of it back in October, but now they are the Athol Bears. We're unveiling it here. They're the Athol Bears. So.
There you go. Breaking news.
There you go.
This is, we have done for our little show here. We've we've dove into this quite a bit from a couple different angles, and it's interesting to me. I'll tell you, I've dealt with a lot of the principals. I dealt with a principal at Pentucket, who are the Pentucket Sachems, and they will be making the change away from the Sachems. And one of the things that was you don't really think about just being me, radio talk show host. Without kids is he said, you wouldn't believe how much stuff goes into it. You're talking about rebranding of basketball courts, uniforms, school logos, banners. I mean, this is a big decision.
The expenditure is huge, which is why we wanted to do this, get at least the branding part out for free. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's why, and it's huge for have somebody like you come to the rescue. And they also, a lot of these schools are putting a lot of time into it, setting up committees to look into the issue. And I've also had professors at colleges come on. One in particular always one of the lines that she said to me will always stick with me, where she said, you'll always be able to find somebody who maybe lives in Native American who is not offended. You can always find that person. But it is offensive. Every single one of these is offensive. You'll always be able to find the person that can justify it, but it is offensive, and we should just do away with every single one of them in our culture. Mm-hmm. And I thought that really stuck with me, that every one of these should be gone. And she studied this her whole life. It's a fascinating subject because it is so much out there. It's a part of us.
Well, and that's of the ones that we are working with right now, North Brookfield is the least offensive. If you want to, if people want to Google the North Brookfield Indian, he is a hand-drawn, it is a brave, he looks majestic, it is not cartoonish, it is not insulting from like the Red Raiders point of view or like the Cleveland Indians point of view, where it's really not good. It's a majestic looking, male Indian brave, which is, and it's that if you're going to represent it, that and people are making the argument that, look, this is honoring them. And I get that argument, but It's just not. So in part of the process that we've been working with the schools is we work with these committees. So the committees will get set up, and they're usually a combination of administrators and teachers and students and alumni and community members and just this whole hodgepodge of people. And we start off the process with, you have to come up with the parameters of what makes a good mascot for this is not for me to tell you, this is you as the community to tell me what are the guidelines that you want to have. And everybody that we worked with has been, oh, okay. So, and they come, and Athol, because we've gone through the whole process with that, Athol now has their full suite delivered. The school committee voted on it. They're actually ordering uniforms now. Like, they are through the process and they're on the other side. So they were sort of taken aback with the fact that these parameters are going to set the guidelines for what they want to do. So one of the guidelines that they had set up was that it can't be taking anything from any other culture or human. It can't be that. And so this caused a problem for their committee, because the front runner before we started, Athol has a sister city in Scotland, and they are very tied with the whole Scottish culture for some reason in Athol. So they were very much about bringing the Highlanders in as a mascot. And they had like 98% town approval. It was all over the place. Everybody was there. But then when they set up their parameters, which said you can't appropriate a culture or a human, that made it so that the Highlanders was against that parameters, and they had to, in essence, get rid of the front runner because it went against that, because they're going to have a problem 10 years from now if somebody found something wrong with that. And really, at this point in human cultural society, we really shouldn't be absconding anyway. Even if it's, in our research, we couldn't find anything that was culturally offensive about the Highlanders. We found some things about Lowlanders, but not necessarily Highlanders. It wasn't about that. It was culturally appropriating anybody. So they had to take that out of the running, which caused a whole big kerfuffle in the town. But they set the parameters for what it was. And that's important to have those guidelines as you're doing this process.
Man, that is fascinating. It gives you an idea of what goes into all this. I'm sorry, the dog was crying a little bit. I'm not sure if you can hear. Very anxious. The weather's getting warmer, and the dogs are just they're just, all they want to do is just go outside. They get very, if I'm around, they expect me to be running with them at all times. Again, we're joined here by Jake Messier. As you can see, great little backdrop, herd strategy and storytelling. I mentioned a little bit about that principal that I talked to. You mentioned you're working with what looks to be 5 schools now. You put this offer out there. Was part of you surprised that you didn't get more back? Because when I could relate to that principal. I knew the school committee had voted to change the name, and I could see maybe the principal completely agreed with the decision, but I could see the financial pain on his face of thinking about all the things that were going to needed changing along the way. I mean, he just knew it was going to be a task. Yep. Are you surprised you didn't get more people coming at you?
You know, I am, but I'm not. I mean, you have to be in the right headspace to do this. You do. You have to be, your school committee has to be on board, your committee. I mean, I will tell you that on the committee itself, for some of these, we've been working with people that they have representatives on the committee that do not agree with this. And that's hard to work with them, because I'm like, I'm not here to convince you of it. I'm not here to convince you that this is a good idea anymore. The decision has been made. We don't step in until the school committee has made that decision. So I'm not here to convince you that this is a good idea, and I'm not here to listen to you think that it's a bad idea either. I mean, that's not what I'm here for. It's funny.
Just to help.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these, once we get through the initial committee meetings of what we're going to do, the next step is, and I've said this to all of them, is that if you don't get community buy-in here, you're sunk. You have to get, so the first step of that process is going out to the community with like a 2-week survey, which is, it's really an open blue sky. What do you want the new name to be? And we get everything, you know, from serious names to screw you, keep it the same, to way more heavier language than that, to, you know, a group to get together, and then like a whole bunch of kids will get together and they want to be the flying unicorns or something. And the AD will be like, listen, if we march out there with the flying unicorns, you're going to be without an AD, or, you know, there's all these things that come in. So about 2/3 of the list that came in was not usable. It was either something that came in as a joke or didn't fit the parameters that they laid out, or it was, I will tell you that it's funny because it's not a slam dunk that this is well received. And I know you know that because over half the responses, I think Neshoba, we got like over 2,000 responses. I don't remember the exact number. It was a sizable number of responses. Over half came in saying, keep it the same. I don't know what you're doing. So you're dealing with members of the communities that really are not for this at all. And that's a struggle. So you have to get community buy-in. You have to be transparent all along the way about what you're doing and why you're doing this.
And that has to be a combination of just not knowing enough about the topic. Maybe it's nostalgia. You remember playing for your school back in the day, and you just have you associate memories with that piece of fabric and that logo. I think it's maybe all those things, but it is amazing a lot of the arguments that we've seen happen in all these different communities regarding this issue. Again, we're joined here by Jake Messier. I would be remiss if I did not ask you. It's a lot of money. I mean, it really is. And I have to ask, besides the great feedback and, it's a great thing on its own, what's in it for Herd Strategy?
We're doing the right thing. And a couple sweatshirts, because my art director wants sweatshirts of all the logos she creates. I mean, we're hoping to set an example for other companies to just find a way to do something. Like we couldn't go out there and do other things that other companies were doing during last summer's social justice. So we found the thing that we can do. We found the thing that we can help with. Yeah, we're gonna volunteer in $150,000, $200,000 of work over the next year, or from 18 months worth. But by all means, is it worth it? I have complete buy-in from my team. They volunteer their time. It's not something that we do during our working hours. I volunteer. I sort of lead. If each process is about a 6-month process, roughly, that's what it's looking like. I sort of lead all the branding exercises up front with the committees, and we work through all those dialogues and what do we do. And then my art and my creative team, they come in at about the 3-month mark, because that's when we start that design process. But they're all working. My team is volunteering their time as part of this as well, because Herd is a family, and we strongly believe behind the social justice part of this, and doing the right thing is really, it's all the reward we need. We don't need anything else out of this.
It's a very cool answer. And I'm sure you said you got a lot of kind of tough feedback when it came to people just upset about the whole premise in general, but I bet you got some good feedback too about, thank you for doing this. This is a real difference.
We do. It's really great. And it's, we received one piece of feedback, and it sort of justified the whole thing. And me as a business owner, me leading this tremendous, tiny but mighty team that we have. It was a young girl she was a freshman or a sophomore at one of the schools we're working with. I'm not going to tell you which school, but she wrote a really impassioned email. She's a minority young girl, and she's not Native American, but she said, this means something to me and every kid of color that's in this school. We're not Native American. She goes, I don't even think we have any Native Americans in the school. We're a small school. But she goes, it means something to me and every kid of color that is here, that what we're seeing as the school is representing is representative of all of us and not just some of us. And that, I read this to my staff in one of our staff meetings, and, we all got teary-eyed. We're doing this for the right reasons. And it doesn't really matter to me that people don't want to change. A, it's time to change. And B, we didn't make you change. We're just helping facilitate what somebody else made a decision on. And we applaud the bravery of the people that, like, these school committees are putting their necks out there. These principals are sticking their neck out there. These superintendents, these school committee, they know that by doing these decisions, they're risking their political career. Like, I get that you're the school committee of North Brookfield and you're not a U.S. congressman. I get it, but you have aspirations and you're doing a job, and you have relationships that could be damaged in your small town, but they're doing the right thing. So why aren't we going to do the right thing?
That's great. That's all you needed. That's all you needed to be validated. That's fantastic. And somebody once said change is hard too, right? So
it is hard.
But what would you say? I do want to end with a little rapid fire. We always end with rapid fire. We got to get to meet our guest a little bit. So I hope you're up for that. But one last thing on that point, because it's been a fascinating discussion, and thank you for making it easier on schools to get this done, because it's an important thing. And along with all the other stuff that's been going on in 2021 and pandemic and all the protests on the streets, this was another one that really popped up, and it was just no shortage of news, I'll tell you that much. But thank you for making it easier. What would you want to tell people that maybe are just, everybody wants to change history? This is ridiculous. This has been this way forever. Why do we have to change everything? It's been this way since we were kids. What would you tell that person who's just a little bit stubborn and doesn't want to hear it?
Well, again, I'll just reiterate that it's not my job or my team's job to convince anybody that this is the way to do it. However,
that's true, but we know how you feel, so
I get it. But I will tell you this. I would say, and I'm making a broad generalization, that people that are going to make those arguments are a little bit older. And I would ask that you talk to some kids that are affected by this. Talk to some students. I get that you graduated from some high school in 1985 and you were the star quarterback and you wear your Letterman jacket proudly to this day. I get it. But you can buy a new jacket and talk to the kids that are affected by this today. The kids that are coming up and the kids that are coming up behind them, because what you're teaching them, because this isn't 1989 again, where I was graduating from North Brookfield High School, where I was like, yeah, I'm an Indian. Okay. That doesn't really mean anything to me. It doesn't, but it's not anything bad either. But the knowledge is out there now. And if you ignore it at this point, it's inexcusable. You can't ignore it now. You can't ignore the offensive-ness of it. You can't. If the Washington Redskins became the Washington football team, which is the dumbest name, if we can rebrand a school in a couple of weeks, I figured that the Redskins could probably, we'll volunteer for the Redskins too. It probably would have been better than the Washington. But like, if a major sports team says, you know what, this is wrong, then you have to realize that times change and we're not rewriting history. What we're rewriting is racism, and you can't call it anything else. You have to call it racism. It's the same thing where if for some reason some high school had a negative term for an African-American on there, it would be the exact same thing. But for some reason, Native Americans aren't seen of as the same thing. You have all this, you have Black Lives Matter movements. You have the Asian, Stop Asian Hate movement and everything else that's going on right now. For some reason, people don't. And of course, if any of those names were in there, if it was the Yellow Raiders and it was an Asian looking person, that thing would have been stripped out of Athol 20 years ago. No way would that. But for some reason, the Native American culture is not seen in that same light. So what I would encourage people to do is talk to some people under the age of 30 and figure out where their head is, specifically a person of color. Talk to somebody that doesn't look like you and see how they feel about it. That's my words of wisdom is, and you need to talk to some people who don't look like you to broaden your horizons.
Well said. All right. And you're on record for saying you would not have gone with the football team for the Washington.
No, I would not have done that. Yeah.
Goes against your professional training.
Oh yeah. We had a big discussion about that when it happened. We were like, we rattled off 10 names that but anyway. So
what was the top one? What should they have gone with?
Of course you would ask me that. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I don't remember what the top name was. But we had a brainstorming. We were actually going to do a whole blog and send it to them and everything else, but we ended up having to do all our pro bono work instead. So it sort of took precedence.
Understood. All right, final 60 seconds here. First thing that comes to your mind, this is when we get to meet the guest. Hope you all enjoyed this. Jake Messier from Herd Strategy and Storytelling. Check him out, doing great things, and follow this process here too, as they really help out a lot of schools who are the ones that he's working with. It's a big undertaking, so he is really helping out all these schools. And talk to any principal having to go through this, and you can get a real feel for that. Anyway, rapid fire. You ready for this?
Ready.
Favorite musician?
It's a little band called Magic Giant out of California. My wife and I go to their summer camp every year. We do yoga and sound healing and all these weird, trippy things. And we go to the Redwoods and hang out with the band. It's awesome.
Ooh, I like that. One of the more original answers we've had. Very good. Okay, favorite movie?
Jaws.
Jaws. All right. Favorite city in the world?
Tokyo. Lived there for 4 years. Met my wife there. My wife is from Pennsylvania, but we were both in the military. I was in the Marines, she was in the Air Force, and we met in Tokyo, Japan. We lived there for 4 years. Our 2 older kids were born there. Yeah, it's my favorite city in the world.
Awesome. Favorite food?
Before I lost 100 pounds, it would have been pizza, but now I like salad.
You lost 100 pounds?
Well, 97. I fluctuate, between, yeah. I had a stroke. I had a stroke at 47 a couple of years ago, and it was sort of this big wake up call. And I, stopped drinking, and not that I'm against, but my doctor was like, "Yeah, you really can't drink anymore." I was like, "Okay, cool, whatever." So I stopped, and then I got healthy, and that's where we're sort of at now. So yeah. But now it's good for now. I love a good salad, which I'm turning 50 this year, so it makes sense that I love a good salad.
What I'm having for dinner too. I'm trying to go on a health kick myself here. Well, congratulations, though. That's great. I almost want to end on that one, but I do want to end. I like to end with this because you're a smart guy who has good views on the world. What is the best professional advice you ever got? We got a lot of high school kids on the show here too, so let's think with them in mind.
I tell this, I have a very junior team. I hire people on the team that, they know social media and digital advertising way better than I do. And anybody, my team is 25, 26, 27, and I give this advice to them all the time. So it certainly applies to younger people, is that never, ever be afraid to take that risk and to put yourself out there, because I've been putting, I'm 50 and I'm going to be 50 this year, and I'm still taking not, more calculated risks now, but follow your passions. Don't, and this sounds like a terrible valedictorian speech, but it's really true. Follow your passions, because I would never have gotten to the place where we're working with Herd if I sort of followed the normal path. And so find the things that make you happy and then make a career out of that. It doesn't matter. The world is a wide open place nowadays. You can make a career out of anything. So it used to be like you had to fit into these little boxes. Now you can really be into video games. There is a whole, multi-billion dollar industry just in the US alone about video games. So if you love video games, go into video games. If you love music, follow your passion and make that your career. Just don't go to school for your thing. Figure out what you like and then go to school and make yourself into that thing that you want to be. So that's what I tell my team all the time.
Good stuff. Jake Messier, I enjoyed it very much, man. Good to meet you here virtually. Stay safe during the pandemic. And this was fun. We'll do something again someday. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew.
All right. Happy spring.
You too.